Okay, before we deal with any questions. The next one, please. Right. Just to introduce us, Human Capital Department, we work with CAPALC and we provide the HR advisory service to the association. We are a Kings Lynn-based consultancy and we specialise in all areas of HR practice. I'm a co-director of the Human Capital Department. I'm qualified, and the thing for local government, local district councils, is that I have over 30 years experience in working in local government in HR. So I think I understand the sector. Right, Jay has recently joined us, and he'll tell you a little bit about him later on. Okay, thank you. Next one. What we think we need to do is to help put a frame round it to allow people to understand where it fits in the type of activities we're involved in. If you look at the chart on the right, you'll see on the right hand side, you'll see we're attract, and recruitment is very much attracting people to come and work for you or with you or alongside you. And then when we move through the life cycle, we're having advertised a job and put the attractant out there called a job with money and career perhaps, we then move into the issue of getting selecting people to come or person to come and work for you in a specific role. And we then, once we've done that, the next thing is to get what's known as onboarding. When I started, that was used as induction. The word that was used as induction. It's inducting them into where they were going to work. And once they're there, we then part of the process is about you should be developing them to reach to a higher level of job performance and also, if possible, their career, and engage them in what you're doing. And finally, all things come to an end. That the last stage being separation and people leaving either to another job elsewhere, a career elsewhere, or to another part of their life. Okay, thank you. So recruitment selection is what we're going to be looking at. The issue, I would say to you as an HR practitioner, that before we get anywhere, people have to understand that post-COVID, recruitment, irrespective of where you are, is difficult. It doesn't matter whether it's public sector, parish councils, or the private sector. It is difficult to do because people and governmental changes have made some changes to the nationality issues, with particularly around some jobs, and we've seen that in sort of potential shortages and whatever. But I do think the clerks one in particular is equally difficult, because I think if you looked at what was going on through the CAPALC website, probably in December, I think there were between 14 or 15 jobs being advertised at one time. And what the problem is that often, with particular this area, the supply doesn't equal the demand, and because every council is trying to recruit a qualified clerk, but there aren't the people out there. That's the issue. So when we get into recruitment, so what we need to do is define the job role, the job description, the person spec. We need to consider the advertising and where we advertise or where we promote the job. We need to think about the selection process, and we need to think about the offer we wish to make, and also the contract of employment, because that is the full cycle relating to recruitment and selection of people. This one. So what do we do? Well, we often end up with job description, person spec, but the missing stage often is the job analysis. It's really breaking a job down so we actually understand what is required. And what is required is what is required now, it's not what was required previously. So that's why it's done. It's about making sure the job description and person spec are current and meet the current requirement. And then, we've also got a need to include the other bits of information, like what the job description goes into the job description and also the other things. I'm not sure we would want to include working conditions, but they can go there. Okay, next one. Here is an example of a shortened version of a job description for a council job for a finance officer. Really, the idea is to try to make the role description bit as succinct as possible, so it gives a focus on what you're trying to recruit. The other, and really the sort of the duties and responsibilities or the accountabilities, there shouldn't be any more, I believe, than 12 to 15. Because it's not about providing a detailed understanding of everything somebody does. It's about giving people an overview of what they are responsible for. And that means when you move to things like appraisal, you ought to be reviewing whether they've successfully or not delivered the outcomes required by their job description. So if we then move on to the person spec, Alan Rodger's 7-point plan is a well-known plan process in HR, but this is why you need it. And often I find, not just with local councils, but with the private sector clients, they often do not have this document in place. Most do, but some don't. And they're trying to recruit somebody off the sort of job description at best. Now, the issue with the person specs is that the person specs are written in certain ways. Can we show the one we've got follows? Really, the criteria which Alec Rodgers is actually on the left. This isn't just an example of the first page. Therefore, what is it? What education and training is required for the role, and what knowledge and experience is required for the role? Then the question is deciding whether those criteria are essential or desirable. And the reason for being that is when you're actually looking at an applicant, you should predominantly be shortlisting people who make most of the essential criteria. Desirables, yes, are helpful, but the essential ones are far more important. And then we move on to looking about how you identify whether somebody meets the criteria or not. There's a couple of ways of doing it on here. One is by CV and the other one is by the interview process, but there's a whole host of other ones you could use. For example, if they have qualifications, like a driving license is a qualification, they might physically bring it with them to the interview so you can see it, so they can prove it, or certificates, and etc. Equally, some jobs, if it's got a public part to it, where there's a need to talk to the public or the need to communicate with groups, there might be a need to have a presentation. We'll get them to do a presentation as part of the interview. But again, it's only where it should be an essential part of the role. We all have to make, unfortunately, like me, having to do doing a presentation today, something I don't normally do, but I'm having to do it. But it would be a desirable rather than essential, I think. I'll have to check with Peter on that one. So and of course, and it's all about demonstrating that people meet the requirements. And of course, I don't know if anybody's been there, but if you put somebody in a role and they haven't got the knowledge, skills, and experience that goes with it, you're going to have a few problems. So other things that can be used is that there are areas of recruitment where, and I see it quite often, particularly with a role like this one, where there is an assumption that because somebody's applying for the job, they're numerate. I can prove to you that often I have assessed people who are accountants and demonstrated them they weren't numerate. So the way of proving that is by using things known as occupational tests, which will give you confidence that you're appointing the right person where that is a key activity. Or if, the same sort of test can be used for virtually anything from literacy to interpretation to even the use of IT or computing. So, so those tests are around. They take 10 minutes about each to do, and they don't cost an awful lot. And guess what? I'm qualified to use them. So, but generally, it's not one I've encountered that much with dealing with small councils. It's that I think there's a risk that if they do assume somebody's got it and they haven't, there's a risk of that. Okay.
Next slide.
Here is the example of the advert for the same job. The issue here is that what we're talking about here is that this is not particularly a wonderful example because it doesn't really go with it has the words, but the presentation of it could be better. Now the reason that is because we wanted to put it inside a presentation like this one. And so therefore we had to take all the sort of the bells, the gloss and all the rest of it away from it. So if we look at what's critical to go in, certainly the job title, it's very important these days to put the pay rate in and also any benefits to go with it, because they're part of the things that attracts people who might want to apply. And it ought to be written in a positive way, sort of in telling them good news about what the council is doing, and also be welcoming. And it should avoid using local government terminology as far as possible. And particularly things like, I have seen adverts which mention spinal column points but don't mention salary. And most people I know, if they didn't work in the sector, would look blank at you if you actually told them about SCPs. And also, it should also describe how to apply and also the closing date. We haven't included that because for lack of space on this one, but we would do normally. And also, I think it's a good idea is when you advertise is to agree the interview date to the council is going to be interviewing, so everybody knows when it is. And also, it helps in dealing with people who might not get shortlisted. They will know if they haven't been if they're not shortlisted, that is the reason why they're not being called for an interview. So if they haven't heard anything by the date, they'll know generally. Okay, so I'm going to stop now and deal with any questions anybody might have.
I did think one earlier, and I can't remember what it was now. So if it'll come to me, it was when you were talking about the
I've gone off.
person specification. But if I remember it later, I'll come back, Rod.
Okay.
People's mics on. That's the other thing.
Yeah, if anyone does have any questions, there's obviously the chat box as well that you can put questions in. If not, you can turn off your mic and chat. But
I think you're sort of left with Becky and myself.
Oh, okay.
Others have dropped out.
Okay,
that's a shame. But,
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. Then.
They dropped out before you started.
That's right.
Did that happen before we started or after I started?
Before you started, Rod. So don't worry.
So it must be to do with you then, mustn't it?
I think it's to do with me. Yeah, definitely.
So was that too fast or not?
No, that's up to Becky. I don't know if you got any questions, Becky.
No, just we're looking for a new RFO, and it's where to do the looking.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I mean well, let's talk about we'll go through. Let's deal with that because we've got plenty of time. So, Becky, would like to talk about that?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, so what's the issues for you?
the issue is it's only 6 hours a week. So I'm the clerk, but not the RFO, and I could do it, but council don't want me to do it. So we're looking for a new RFO. So it has gone to SLCC and to CAPALC, and I have put it on our it's on our website, and it has been on our Facebook page and the village Facebook group. Now, part of it, I think, is we tried to do it before Christmas, and that didn't work. And I just said, I think we need to stop that and redo it all again in January. I think it got caught up with everything else that was going on, and people weren't thinking about new jobs.
Yeah, we'd agree with you on that. But the other mechanism is that, you know, the number of hours you've got offering somebody for employment, they'd have to have a role somewhere else, wouldn't they?
So it would either be for somebody who's got something somewhere else, or I have had an inquiry from somebody who has just retired but would like to have a little bit of income. Or I suppose somebody who's maybe, you know, parent at home, 6 hours could fit round a school day.
Becky, do you use a payroll system, a finance software system like Scribe or?
Yeah, so we use Scribe.
So Scribe is now one where you can access it remotely, can't you? So it could be anyone across the country, couldn't it? Really?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I mean,
maybe I don't know what you think, Rod. Maybe it's worth approaching some of the smaller councils who might just have RFOs that might be interested in taking that on as well.
Yeah, I might have to run that past council, because I think they would quite like the RFO to be able to come to meetings.
Well, there's no reason why they shouldn't. But I mean, they could work based from home, but actually come to your meetings. That's what
they can remotely access.
Yeah.
Well, they could if we had that facility, but we currently don't at the moment.
Okay. Right. So
I'm
other
hoping that
option.
will change.
So, which council are you from, Becky?
Barrington.
I don't know Cambridgeshire that well. You have to explain that. So I'm a foreigner. I live in Kings Lynn.
Okay, it's South Cams. It's semi-rural compared to lots of them. You actually drive through fields and out of villages before you get there. We have a big development currently happening with 220, possibly 260 houses on the outskirts. So there is going to be substantial S106 monies heading in our direction.
So to help me my understanding, how far are you from, say, some of the major towns?
So we're probably 6 to 8 miles from Cambridge.
Okay, just a thought for you, and I mean, I'm doing a recruitment for the one I've just shown you for an RFO in South Cams. So, you know, so basically that hasn't started yet, but it will be next Tuesday.
Okay.
So the thing is, therefore, you might be able to pay on the back of that for a sort of start. That's one way.
Okay.
Equally, you know, if that didn't work, then perhaps I can't tell you the council at the moment because it wouldn't be fair on them. Their RFO, they're looking to employ for 25 hours a week, so that there might be some extra capacity there. So that's the other option.
Okay.
So if you then look at and I think that the other options are, I mean, I'm not sure how effective. I mean, I've had a recent experience using with the LSCC, and that's a national organisation, so therefore they're not dealing with things locally. And it's quite difficult to target something if you're that far away from where you are. As a recruitment process. The option we could offer you from our business is Jay, who's sitting with me, does recruitment, and he goes and searches for people who meets criteria, and we could do that, and it will almost certainly cost you less than what you'll be paying elsewhere.
Okay. Well, so far I've paid absolutely nothing.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you went on LCC doing that for nothing.
Yeah, so it's just through our local networks.
Yeah. Okay. So it's nationally. So it's local. That's fine.
Yeah.
But by and large, what I would say to you that, if you want, basically, it's all about doing some screening of CVs. That's what it's about, really, and seeing who meets the criteria. Now, the thing is, we probably would probably charge you an admin charge for doing that. And that's it.
Okay.
But we would only actually charge you provided you appointed somebody.
Okay. The other thing I wondered about is, and I don't know if you've got any experience, or Penny, whether you know anyone who's done this, there are local, so there's a Facebook group which is called Jobs in Cambridgeshire.
Yeah.
And I have run it past council because I wondered about putting it on that.
Yeah, okay, fine. But if you do that, you should treat it in the way you treat any other recruitment, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really, and I tend to be, by nature, fairly cautious anyhow.
Okay.
So be equally, Facebook is no different than using any other social media like LinkedIn. People do it and they do it very successfully. Just make sure you've got sufficient backup systems in place to actually cover it. That's all I would say about it. But I think it's a really good idea, to be honest. So
I hadn't heard of it, to be honest. So
no, neither have I. But
there's a couple. There's one Cambridgeshire, there's one Cambridge and Ely, and then there's one Royston, because we're a bit more that way. Yeah.
Okay. But really, the thing is that in terms of where you advertise a job, that the free sources already, don't you? So it's your own council's website. You can do it on the Gov.uk website as well. But I suspect I think possibly the problem is the hours number. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where we need joined up thinking, actually, and maybe it's something CAPALC ought to consider for members is where they can match people who are who haven't got a lot of hours and maybe want more hours, within the county,
Yeah, there might be someone sitting there going, I'd just like 10 more hours.
Yeah. But would you like me to ask the council, if they're quite happy to share what they're doing with you? I'm sure they would.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay.
Thank you, if they're happy.
Okay, well, I will do that. Just to say that, I'll give you the bad news as well. Is that, if you do get the alternative to what's available is agencies, and really they can charge up to 25% of the first year's salary for helping.
Yeah.
So you probably know that already. So it's a very I think there's enough. I would. My view is that the service that CAPALC offers probably should be able to get most of the clerks appointed, really, in Cambridgeshire.
Okay.
So, because I think it's a good thing to do. The only thing now is that we're having talked through that bit. So I think we need to go back onto our agenda so we can make sure we give you what we gave everybody else. So it's so if you find somebody and you call them forward for interview, you need to do things before you get to the interview. Are you familiar with the requirements of the Immigration Act 2008?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Well, what that means is before you interview anybody, you have to check they have the right to work in the UK, whether they're UK citizen or not.
Okay.
And you have to have the sight of their evidence that they are a resident or a citizen of the UK or have the right to work here. That means, in general terms, is most employers will ask candidates to bring with them their passport. They will copy the passport and keep the copy of that passport on file, and that's it. But but the penalties of not doing it are pretty severe.
Yeah, fine.
And
good to know.
so the sort of there are. Do you want to move on?
Yeah, that's fine.
No, not you.
Oh.
Talk to Jay at the moment.
Oh, sorry, Jay.
No,
We'll speak for you.
Okay, that's fine. Do you want me to do the next slide?
please, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we've probably already covered the. I think it's about in terms of generally when you're. Yeah, I think we can move on to that.
Yeah,
We don't need.
on that one.
We've told you about that. We've already done that. And those are the other ones. You have you got a LinkedIn profile, or anybody got the?
I do personally.
You might if do you identify there as a clerk?
No, that's just what I was going to say. It's not for
No,
clerking.
No, don't do it then. No, because you want to keep that sort of personal. Then leave that alone. Then, okay, move on.
Yep.
So therefore, we've talked about the sort of Immigration Act 2008, but really, I think most of these are, what's on here is fairly straightforward. It's about preparation, saying hello and greeting people, explaining the format, what's happening, drawing questions from the CV brought up, and or the job description of person spec. And I'll come back to questions in a minute. And closing is about making sure you've checked off and reviewed what we discussed, giving them an opportunity to ask questions, and actually told them what happens next. The one thing I would say that I understand with counsellors, sometimes they can't make instant decisions, but they shouldn't take too long to make any decision. It should be no more than a couple of days, really, because otherwise, that causes questions. Moving on, okay.
Rod, can I just ask, do you think people generally make the decision, if say they have all the interviews on the same day, do you think the interview panel will have made up their mind at the end of that day?
Yes.
Because I would have thought if it lingers on a bit, then maybe nobody's quite right.
Well, no, but generally, sort of, the words I will use is political expedience. If you're working a political organisation, sometimes you need to check what decision you're making before you make it. Because I have had one counsellor who took 2 weeks to make a decision.
Oh, crikey!
Which therefore I would like them to make it on the day of the interview, to be quite honest, and also agree if they haven't made it by the next day, then they haven't probably got the right candidate.
Yeah.
So, but it is very. And really, if you go back to somebody a week afterwards, you risk them being saying, "Well, you can't be bothered to come back to me. I don't want to come anyhow." Because
what does that say to somebody about your organisation?
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't do you any good, to be honest with you. But I was just being careful by saying a couple of days because. But I think probably what what would be useful to do is if you decide people aren't right for you, then is to tell those people as soon as possible. If you've got one or two, you might, option A or option B, then it's probably reasonable to say we'll be making a decision within whatever period. Yeah. So moving on to questioning at interviews. We believe that any question asked should be one of the prefixes in front of you should be the ones that are used, and never the word why. The reason because you encourage a close response to a question, and really what you're trying to find out is to find out about the person you're talking to. So, and that's one of the things I would specifically aim at counsellors. Yeah, so it's because I think it's never recruitment is never it's never that clear, is it? Because you're dealing with people who are very different from each other. They have to be, yeah. So they might have a different. Anyhow, moving on.
Yeah.
And those are. I'm not going to go. These are some of the risks we see. At the parish council level, if I had one concern, would be the potential for councillors asking discriminatory type questions, and really that can get you into a lot of hot water, to be quite honest. And I mean, as Penny and I have smiled about this before, but like an inappropriate question is, do you know how to make tea? You know, but it might be taken wrongly, and you might end up being somebody pursuing it because you've been asked it. That's keeping it at its simplest form. But equally, you know, the other thing to say about interviews is there ought to be a trail through your process. A trail should record what happens during the interview, and if you have more than one counsellor, the notes of all should be collected together and kept in one place, because therefore, if somebody challenges your decision, you've got all the information.
Yeah.
So how long would you retain that? Sorry, Becky. How long would you retain those notes, Rod?
If it's about the candidate, always.
Always. All right. Interesting. What?
Okay. Really?
Well, yeah. Because it's the reason being is part of their recruitment process. It's evidence.
Okay. So
what about GDPR?
Well, with GDPR, what way is it?
Sensitive information, isn't it?
So when I have become clerk on 2 places, I have found files on the computer, both from when I was recruited, which had everybody else's details, and sometimes from the recruitment before me. And I thought they shouldn't be there.
You're right. But I'm just saying it's about the person they appoint, not the others.
So you would delete the others within 2 months?
Yeah, so I deleted all of those when I found them.
Yeah, but that is I'm sure lots of companies and businesses will retain lots of things they're not supposed to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And they probably don't know they have done. And so, but equally, I was asked a question earlier today. So, I mean, how do you make sure, you know, the issue is about making sure that you have the information that shows you that if it was a decision, that it was a consensus decision, not just one person's opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and really, if you have a person spec, the other thing is for the job, you have your criteria for selection in that document. That's what it's there for.
And those we've used a tick box thing before.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, I think I would say to you that you councillors need to be increasingly aware of going back to discrimination type issues, simply because the damages are and I believe are unlimited.
Okay.
Yeah. So and your insurers probably wouldn't be very pleased with you if you actually started submitting claims. So, but anyhow, right. Shall we ready to move on?
Yeah.
Jay. So that's the summary of what I think we were supposed to cover. I haven't done. Let's deal with the offer letter and employment contract. There has been a legal change to particularly the contract. The letter of offer should be, I think, if you do that, needs to be offer the job, offer the pay rate, and probably give the hours of work. And because all you're trying to do is get confirmation that they want to take the job, the contract needs to actually meet the statutory requirements, and the model contract from NOG does generally that. Mm-hmm. However, the change that came in up to last year, employers had up to 8 weeks to introduce and give new employee their contract of employment. From April last year, the contract has to be issued on the first day or prior to the first day of employment, and it can't. And to do anything else is illegal. So I mean, so that is a very important point to make. And really, and I mean, as far as I know, there hasn't been anybody being. So, well, yes, I do know one. The minister introduced the legislation, was one of the people who got prosecuted for non-compliance. So it's that was a couple of years ago, a year ago. So anyhow, right. So next one. So we can help with those things, and really, I'll do a bit of advertising for CAPALC. That if there are any HR issues, your council as a member, you can have an hour of my time anytime.
Okay.
So it's and that, moving on. We have introduced, this might not be for you, but we made an offer to everybody else. We saw today. We are to introduce a new tool in our sort of portfolio of products. And what we've offered anybody who attended it today, they can use it for free. Really, this looks at as an assessment of people in their role in managing anything. So it looks at how they manage their job, how they relate to others, and build the team, and how they think, or they can think clearly. So what we would offer is the opportunity to complete the assessment process, and we would give them feedback, and it wouldn't cost them anything. So if you would like to do that, then let us know.
Okay.
So I don't think, have you got, and anything else? This is what it looks like. This is what a result looks like. I mean, just to say that I've done lots of these over the years. It works on, just explain, a percentile basis. And therefore, it actually reviews you against the population of those people who have done it. And it's not about saying you're right and you're wrong. It's saying what you know and understand about anything. And therefore, if you're low, it means that you've got some development needs in that area. That's what it says.
So it could be used for an appraisal?
Absolutely. If you wanted it to be that done, I've used it for that. Yeah. So therefore, anyhow, so that's me. That's us finished, I think. Apart from telling you where you can contact us, that's it.
Yeah.
So, I hope that's helped a bit.
Yeah, it has helped a bit. Thank you.
All right. So, right. Okay.
A little bit shorter because it's just you, Becky. Really.
Yeah.
Obviously, the council I saw on Monday obviously had enough of me Monday night. So it's
She left, didn't she?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, she's probably had enough of me as well. Yeah. So okay.
Okay.
All right.
I don't have any further questions, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take
Cheers.
care, everybody.
Becky.
And
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Okay.